Okay, this is the October 15th meeting of the Harbor Management Commission, and we're meeting on the second floor today, thus the late start, in the second floor conference room. And it's 4:35 p.m. We have a quorum, and I think I'll call the meeting to order and ask that we rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I know Dave Hunter is on the line. Who else? Is there anybody else on the line?
Yeah. Good afternoon, Don. This is Bill Perugini on the line.
Bill Perugini and Dave, thank you both very much for coming. Okay, so the first item is, of course, the approval of minutes from the last meeting of September 17th, which I did not attend. Are there any questions or comments or concerns on those minutes?
I'm going to remove the last sentence where it says the audio recording can be found here. We could not locate that, so I'm going to remove that before I send it and final.
Very good. There have been a couple of problems sometimes with audio recordings that don't get found. Okay, with that change, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move the minutes be approved as stated.
Second?
I second. I don't think I can.
Can you second?
Second.
Second from Jeff.
Thank you. I don't think I can.
Motion made by George, seconded by Jeff. All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. Unanimous. Good. Unanimous approval. Okay. We have a big agenda this afternoon, but I'm going to move quickly, and a very interesting agenda too. I think we're a busy commission, and we've got a lot done, and we've got more to do, but it's pretty dynamic. First item in my report has to do with kind of an ongoing conversation that Viola Haynes has been having both with me and with Jeff regarding this outstanding balance on a grant that we got in 2017. I think since this agenda was created, Jeff has had conversation with Viola. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you're moving towards a refund. Do you want to comment on that at all? This has been on the agenda on and off for a few months or years, depending on how you look at it.
Since 2022. Yes, I'm working on it with her, but also you should know that the Port Authority still has to make a policy decision about whether we can withhold any of the money for our expenses. They may ultimately request that we fund the entire amount, as a matter of policy, but they're considering that now. And also the town engineering department did a spreadsheet of in-kind services based on the hours that they put into the project. I don't have that in front of me. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $6,000. And it's not clear whether the Port Authority will accept that as an expense that we can retain. So that's work in progress. I was planning to go to the Port Authority meeting today in Old Saybrook, but didn't go because of this meeting and some other things.
Okay.
So we're working on it.
Yeah. All right. As you point out, it's been an active discussion since 2022. It's now 2024. Is it possible that we could resolve this issue before the end of the calendar year?
Well, I'm hoping to resolve it before the next meeting. Yes, if we can.
So, yes.
There's no assurances, but that's what we're working on.
All right.
The Port Authority met today, actually, and approved another round of SHIP grants. A total amount of $10 million. Interestingly, I don't know where they got the other 5 from, but 16 projects throughout Connecticut were approved by the board today. They still have to go to the bond commission for the allocation of funds. So hopefully next year there will be an opportunity for us to again apply for a grant.
Good. Well, I think they understand that you've been distracted by competing events, and they have their own policy to iron out on the matter. But I'm glad you feel we can resolve this by the end of the calendar year, by the end of December. That would be great. A smaller, easier matter was the dredging inventory, which I believe you submitted to the Port Authority about Fairfield's additional dredging locations and details. And I wanted the commissioners to have a copy of that. That hasn't happened.
Betty has a copy. I thought she might have sent it out with the agenda, but I sent it to Betty for distribution to the commission.
Very good. You have this, you'll get it to us.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Second,
I might also interrupt you, Chairman. The Port Authority and the Corps are going to have a meeting to discuss the results of that inventory. It's a Corps of Engineers survey that the Port Authority agreed to do for them. But there is going to be an upcoming meeting to discuss the results of it and what it all means. I don't have the date right now, but I can inform people.
good. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Betty. I just think it's, dredging is so much with us, but there's more dredging yet to do in the big picture, eventually, sooner or later, maybe by other commissioners, but I just think we should understand what that is, that's all.
If I may, there's the dredging material management study public information session, and that we did, that's a couple of dates. It's all virtual, October 21st, 24th, or 26th.
Right. I shared the email on that
Everyone's been emailing
with everyone, and I expect to see you all there. The next item I wanted to talk about was the Porsche application and just my conversation with Jim Wendt and some other information I got earlier today from TPC Commissioner, another TPC Commissioner, the Alexis Harrison. Anyway, we spent a lot of time on the Porsche matter, as you well know, and suffice it to say, the application is closed as of last week. TPC is expected to vote or discuss it on October 22nd. Could be one or the other or both, but certainly they'll be discussing on October 22nd. If you are readers of Alexis Harrison's blog, there's some interesting information that I've pulled from that. One of them that surprised me actually was that we were not the only commission to decline participating and providing a report. The Shellfish Commission and the Conservation Commission also declined to provide comments to TPZ on this matter. It doesn't say why, but they didn't provide. It also was interesting to learn that one of the issues that we were concerned about was the metal bulkhead, and that will become the responsibility of the property owner down the road. Whenever that needs to be addressed, that's the property owner's responsibility, not the town's. The town has responsibility for the easement area if that all gets approved, and there are now going to be 5 parking spaces for public access to that space. And there'll be a sidewalk with picnic tables and trash cans, as we've learned. Recreation will be limited pretty much to the passive recreation that we've talked about. Looking at the water, there's still language in there about fishing and shellfishing, even though that's a pretty long reach. But we shall see how that proceeds. I just wanted to share that information with you because we had spent so much time talking about it. The other thing I wanted to share was that I heard from Devin Santa regarding a lower wharf permits that need to be completed for DEP so that they can get that part of the process in motion. There are permits, and I have the permits. It seems to be a simple matter of signing off on it. I invited Devin to come, but I guess he or his engineer weren't able to join us.
Going to his daughter's high school soccer game.
Oh, yeah, she's the lead athlete. I voted in that. Everybody who didn't vote. Okay, but there is that document that needs to be signed. I think I've shared that document with you, and Betty has shared it with you. It's a pretty straightforward, from what I can see, routine document. Jeff has mentioned that his preference or his recommendation would be to write a letter of transmittal that made clear that the permit was compliant, consistent with our harbor management plan, rather than simply checking the box that it's consistent with our harbor management plan. I think that was your suggestion.
Right. This is a pre-submission consultation form for a DEEP permit. And so DEEP requires the applicant, whether it's an applicant is the town or a private applicant, to submit that pre-submission consultation form to the commission with the pre-submission plans. The commission's policy has always been, with respect to a private applicant, not to say that the plan is consistent or inconsistent with the harbor management plan, but to just to say we have no objection to it moving forward to a permit application. In this instance, since it is our project and it's pursuant to the harbor management plan, I believe it would be appropriate for the commission to agree to inform DEEP that it's consistent with the harbor management plan, and to articulate the reasons why in a letter to them, which could be the same as the letter we sent the last time.
Okay.
So my thought is that the commission would agree to find the submittal, the proposed plan is consistent with the harbor management plan, and have no objection to them moving forward to DEEP for the regulatory process.
And would there need to be a second letter related to the transmittal form?
No, it's just, there's a form that has several pages, and I don't know if that's the first one, yes.
I have them both.
Yeah, so that's very similar to what we did for the bridge over Sasko Brook at Greens Farms and Kings Highway, except that was a private applicant, actually it was a town project, but we had no objection to it moving forward. So,
Excuse me, I'm hearing background noise from someone. Can you please mute your phone so we don't hear that dialogue? Thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff. The only thing I'm concerned about is I recognize that the letter could contain information that spells out the consistency with our plan. I also know you have a lot on your plate.
we can do this in the next day or so, Don.
I just don't want to compromise other things that you have to do at this time, frankly, because I know we're going to be talking about the dredging letter that has to be developed, and there's other documents that you're working on.
Well, we can do this by Thursday and put together a letter. It goes, we just need to you need to sign that and scan it into an electronic copy and send it with the letter.
Could you have Devin stand and put in to the attached brief in the document itself that it is in compliance with the harbor management plan?
He could do that. I just think as a matter of policy, there should be a formal letter from the commission on file with DEEP explaining the reasons why.
Okay. Then I think what we should do to be forthcoming about all this is I would welcome a resolution that we could vote on that approved going forward with the documents to DEP regarding Lower Wharf. The documents would include the license application, pre-submission consultation form, and the transmittal form, and that there would be a letter of transmittal prepared by Jeff for my signature this week, along with my signing these documents themselves, so that we can move forward on the Lower Wharf program. I would welcome a resolution that reflected something like that.
I'd make that motion.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
Second. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Okay, so we're clear on that, Betty? Everything's been blessed? I'm very sensitive to not doing things correctly.
Renegade you.
Yeah. speaking of Lower Wharf, and this is all connected with that, one of the reasons I'm sensitive to it is that I was reminded that while the Lower Wharf Subcommittee met last week on October 9th, they really didn't meet because I didn't provide a notice for it, so the meeting really never happened, although we did have a good discussion with Bill Hurley, and I just wanted to give you highlights on that talk because he assured us that even though there is an ambiguity right now, to put it mildly, regarding dredging and the time of dredging and when that happens, that all of the bidding process that the town purchasing department will be involved with ultimately will harmonize with that. There's going to be an interlude of 4 to 6 months or something like that before purchasing can even start sending out bids. One hopes we'll know by then, more about dredging. I guess that's to be determined. Anyway, they will harmonize with that. So whatever it is, it'll be done so that we don't have a dredging program and a Lower Wharf rebuilding program going on anywhere near the same time. And what I think I'm going to do to save time and discussion here is I'm going to take these minutes that I've put together, retitle them as notes from my conversation. George and I met with Bill Hurley, and share that with you. And you'll see what I was looking for and what Bill provided was a clear kind of pathway to when we would start and when we might finish Lower Wharf, knowing that the start date is unknown because of circumstances beyond our control. But I just wanted to understand how that flew, because I've never built a wharf before. So.
Don, can I add that we asked him what we as a commission could do to help facilitate the whole project, and he said that there may be some public-facing issues that may come up that that he would welcome our help with. We mentioned, would HDC, Historic District Commission, be concerned with this project at all? And his thought was, it was a good question, and that he thought since it couldn't really be seen from the road, that they didn't have jurisdiction, but as we'll go into later, when Don and I met with the Historic District Commission last week, Bill Hurley suggested that we mention it to them, just to keep them involved and let them know, and so that they're not blindsided when they see permits being pulled. And Adam did seem to say that would be a separate application.
Yes. I got the impression they would welcome an application regarding that at that time.
Although all the material and the rebuilding of the wharf will be in kind, it'll all be concrete, it'll all be wood piers, Adam seemed to think that that we should get an application.
Yeah, I think he said something to the effect, it can never be a complete copy. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we'll do that. The other area that Bill Hurley said that the commissioners would be involved with would be, there's a portion of the funding for this that will come from the town. The vast bulk of it will be reimbursed to the town from the state, from the bonding authorization that we got of $1.1 million. But the town has to come up with some money too. And we will be expected to go to Board of Finance, RTM, Board of Selectmen, and explain that. So one or more of you may be asked to be part of that discussion as we go forward. I think it's a pro forma type of discussion based on everything else that happened, but nevertheless, it's what we have to do. That would be our role. And the other area that he talked about, and actually kind of came up today even with Kim, is public relations and communication with the public on this. I can imagine a few people on Harbor Road, at least, that are gonna wanna know exactly what's gonna happen when and where, and,
How many cement trucks will be there?
yeah, and, we need to be ahead of that curve and not surprise anybody. And then, of course, the town as well. So we'll work closely with the First Selectman's office and their communications and public relations people. Once we have the facts of that solidified. But I think that's an important part of this process so that we don't surprise, alarm, disturb people with what's going to be a noisy, messy thing. You know?
Just one quick intro. We still need to get a coastal site plan review of the work to replace the wall. That will be an administrative review, and they had asked, planning and zoning had asked for the containment measures to avoid the siltation and measures to avoid impacts on the harbor, and that we would use the same approach as used at Perry Green. So Bill, the engineering was helping with that, but we still have to file an application for coastal site plan review for the work. And
When you say we, is it we or does engineering do that?
The Harbor Commission, well, we can put it together, see if Bill wants to apply for it or not. But this is for the wall project. The work in the water, the piers and the docks, since that's subject to a permit or would be permitted by DEEP, planning and zoning doesn't need to do that. So we put together an application for the coastal administrative approval of the coastal site plan for the work on the wall. We're working on that with Bill.
Oh, good, okay, good.
Okay, any other questions on Lower Wharf rebuilding before we move on to the next item, which is actually the first item on old business, our two-sign policy. And George, you want to report on our meeting with the Historic District Commission?
Oh,
yes.
I think we skipped.
Harbor Master.
How did I do that? You know, this is not my strength. Thank you.
Thank you,
for
Mr. Chairman.
understanding.
A couple of things since last month. What have we been doing? We had a kayak. I found a kayak floating. It was a unique kayak, so I was able to quickly determine whose it was, and that no one was on it at the time, and it had just floated away. So we towed it back in for the owner. Did some debris removal from the harbor as wooden logs float in. And we had those very high tides, you remember, a few weeks ago, and there were some fishermen out at the end of the jetty. So we went over and talked to them because they became stuck at the end of the jetty with the tide coming out, because it totally covered the entire jetty except to the end. And they didn't want to ride it. They agreed to wait there, promised to wait there for the next hour and a half for the tide to finish coming up and then go down so they can go off. They were happily fishing, having a great afternoon. So I kept an eye on them, and in fact, I stayed there and did not try to walk in. They couldn't walk in. There was too much water. We gave some advice to someone who was going to try to walk out to Penfield Lighthouse as to whether that could be done and what the risks were inherent with that. There was a boat sinking up in Pine Creek. Sea-Tow took care of that from shore with pumps before it went completely down. We've been our usual mooring inspections, checking how people tie up, that moorings are not dragging when I go out on my patrols. Been keeping an eye on Perry Green. I did speak to engineering about where they'll be putting the cleats back up for the boats to tie off on their bows off of Perry Green. Also an issue I noticed regarding rocks. There was a significant amount of rock and dirt bermed in the harbor adjacent to the face of the wall, which would pose a problem if boats are to tie up and pull in. It would be a bump for them. I took some pictures, sent them to engineering. The contractor will be removing them and pulling them back against the face of the wall and leveling that out. We've done our usual public relations with mooring people and kayakers. I'm pleased to report the last month I didn't have to warn anyone to have a PFD on their kayak. I think that we've been stressing that all season, from the beginning of the season, stopping everyone who has a kayak anywhere around the harbor management area, reminding them to have a PFD with them. And every boat this last month, every kayak has had them on board, so I'm very happy. That's very safe, and that's a good thing for everyone's safety. We've taken depth measurements as recently as this weekend. Tim Taylor and I went out And, because that shallow spot still remains shallow coming in where we have the danger sign. We have to be careful coming in the channel by the end of the jetty. Also, we took measurements.
How shallow is it?
What we're getting, Kim, at that mark, we're like 3 feet. Yeah.
Wow.
So you can't cut that corner, that's why we had to stick the extra one there. And yeah, if you try to come between the last mark and the speed signs, no wake signs, the last red mark, which for years you can just line up between them, you'd clearly run aground to just about every sailboat that there is. So we have that extra mark out there to kind of keep people away from it and not bump it. And occasionally we have to warn folks, visitors will come in and think, red right returning, and we have that big old jetty with a light at the end of it, kind of marked, thinking they can come in close because it looks like a channel, but it's not. You have to be very careful. And we took measurements, and Kim could talk more about, when we get to that part of the report, what we were finding by the lower wharf. It's clearly one-way traffic at low tide, and today's a very low tide, much lower than this weekend, which was a little higher than usual low tide. And even a regular low tide, you don't have enough width to safely pass sailing vessels, yet alone an ideal 18 from the club or for community sailing is, that's trying to tack through there. So it's a challenge. Briefly, I'm going to be on the road at 5:30, so I'll just hit this quickly if I may, just to tell you a little bit about mooring fees, because the mooring committee will be addressing this between now and the end of the year, because we have to set the fees January 1st. And just so you folks know, we did an analysis of material costs between 2018 and 2024. And, things like chain has gone up 25%, mushroom anchors has gone up 85%, and shackles has gone up between 23 and 38% over that 6-year period. And why I say that is the town owns all the tackle of all the town moorings in the harbor. And everyone pays a permit fee for being in the harbor, and it ranges from $100 to $200 based upon boat size. They also pay a tackle fee of $160 to $255. That's because that's town-owned tackle. Every third year, the town moorings are pulled up, brought ashore to the yacht club, because the town has PYC as our vendor for all of that. So that would be the first year. And the second year, the helix moorings are examined, and divers go down and look at those. In the third year, it's the north anchorage, the ones that the yacht club owns. They're all pulled off. So we inspect those, but the town is responsible for the helix and the town moorings, and that's where that cost comes in. If we have to pay for the chain if necessary, or adding mushrooms or bigger mushrooms as the boats occasionally grow. So that's why we kind of looked at that, and the mooring committee will talk more about that. And just the permit fee, that $100 to $200 based upon boat size, comes under the town code, section 2412, and it says the permit fee cannot exceed the amount in one of the state statutes, 22A113S. So we then look at that, and the maximum annual fee is $200 that we can collect, not for the mooring tackle, but just for the rental fee, if you will, the permit fee to be in the harbor. That has to be deposited into a fund maintained by the municipality and shall be used for the maintenance and improvement of the harbor, for the public, and for expenses of personnel and equipment directly related to the functions of the commission and the harbor master or deputy harbor master. That's where the money goes into that fund and what it has to be used for. That's why it's two separate components of that fee, and that's why it's different on all the boats when they renew their moorings. It's basically, you have a 20-footer or a 49-footer, the fee is going to range from $260 to $455 combined fee. That's where those numbers come from. There's a memorandum of agreement back in 2009 with the yacht club, between the yacht club and the town, that they provide the assistance with the mooring tackle, and they charge back those numbers. And we've looked at the numbers in the past few years on the 102 account regarding the yacht club and the charges for their services they provide at a low cost, frankly, to us, if you look at the hourly rate, plus the material costs. And that's something, we'll look at it in the mooring committee, whether we have to increase fees because of material costs. And let's just give a little preview of things we're looking at and how it works with your budget. And speaking of budget, one thing I'm gonna, I'll give a 1 minute pitch here, in case I'm gone at that time. So we've got, I use a 13-foot Boston whaler, which you may have seen in the harbor. It's 61 years old. It's a bit waterlogged. It rides kind of low in the water. And it just has issues doing what we should have it do. It's just not efficient. It's tough pulling debris and limbs because it's not equipped to tow, and it's a light boat. Occasionally I have to tow other boats if they need help, whether it's an ideal coming in that can't make it through the wharf area. It's not very good at that. It's very low freeboard, so whenever you take it out, if there's any waves whatsoever, I get wet or the boat is pounded apart. For instance, we had the regatta, the 100-and-something boat regatta this summer, and I tried to patrol around that, keep people away, and that's very tough in that boat because you continually get wet, and it's difficult, as well as we did the rescue this summer, and it's just a very small boat. So I pulled some numbers together for the commission to consider either pulling from the 102 account or just putting it as a capital request to the town outside the budget. I got some prices for boats. For example, Maritime makes the ideal boat, I think. Something, 18 feet 9 inches, not a large boat, but something big enough, small enough to be useful in the harbor, but big enough to be able to safely go out in the entire harbor management area and not, many times I go out and I come back as soon as I hit the end of the jetty. It's just too rough for the little thing and it's just getting pounded. That's about $68,000 for that. And that's the going price. I priced some other ones. That's the kind of prices we're looking at for a fully equipped with a trailer, with an engine, with a hard top, with everything we need to go. And that's kind of like what our neighboring towns do. I went online just to look at the boats that we see all the time, whether it's Bridgeport or Stamford or Greenwich or Brantford, the types of boats, and they're all very similar to this. That's something, if I'm not here at the budget time, I think we should talk about whether we want to go in that direction. Because the whaler, it's just old, small, and really not a really good job. The harbor management for us. There are no questions?
I have one question related to this, and that's timing. I think you would agree this deserves more of a discussion than we can do just now. But Betty, in terms of the budgeting procedure and a capital request, when does a capital request like he's describing have to be in if there were to be support for it?
The preliminary request needs to be submitted by October 31st. For that,
Okay, well, it's not going to happen before October 31st. I think we need more time to discuss this than is permissible today. And you might want to talk with your budget director under the circumstances to see.
Looked at in the past. Ken, do you remember what the issue was, why it was denied in the past? Was it the insurance, liability?
Pequot was going to donate an old, a boat that they no longer found useful. And to do that, you have to file an application for the town to accept the gift. It was considered at the time by the first selectman and the finance director. He denied the request but never told us why.
Okay, so.
Is that boat still available?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Can we defer discussion on this, continue discussion on this in November and make this an agenda item? Because I think there's a lot that needs to be discussed and heard on this matter. And
Go finish your thought, but I have another question for Brian.
And I'd like to give the time it deserves. Go ahead.
I appreciate this page about the increase in change, but I've never seen anything as far as how much is in this account that This is a mooring account, and you said that there's two fees. There's the town permit fee.
Right.
Does that go to the town, or does that go into our account for the betterment of the harbor?
That goes into the 102, correct, Betty?
Yes.
Yeah, the 102. They call it a 102. I'm not sure why it's called a 102 account. It's just a number. The town gave it to.
Mooring
But that goes to Parks and Rec, or?
No.
No,
Okay.
It's an account that you have a balance, significant balance in that account.
the balance, the last time I talked with Betty was about $200,000
And it's there for what purpose?
to pay for the cost of
That
it.
account has to be, by state law, that account is, shall be used for the maintenance and improvement of the harbor for the public and for expenses for personnel and equipment directly related to the function of the commission and the harbor master.
Thank you.
And that's by state, that's by 20.
And then the town mooring tackle fee goes into the 102 also?
Yes, we put tax fee in there as well, correct, Betty?
Yes,
It goes in the same.
everything goes into
That
that.
goes into that account.
And with these increased prices, has our balance been going down? Are we meeting
You
our?
paid some fees from that. Jeff Greenborg, I believe you had given us some information on how much you thought we would need to have on hand, potentially why we couldn't really touch that account for anything.
And what we're talking about is, I got numbers from Jeff and the club. In the event we lost every mooring and every chain that we own, it would cost 100% replacement. Almost like a worst case scenario. But
Excuse me, we're still hearing a lot of clutter in the background. If you can mute your phone so we don't hear the paper shuffling, it would be appreciated.
And we had more than enough money to fund brand new purchase of everything. And we don't buy new everything. We replace the chains as necessary, new shackles, we fix things. And that's why this is something the mooring committee will look at to see whether we have to increase them at all. You have a big balance in that account.
Right.
102 account. And I just want to make sure that you, something you folks think about. Don't just keep it the same forever, never realizing why it's there and what you're doing with it.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's a good point, and if it's being maintained, you know, would that be a place where we could get a new boat from?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Fun.
I'd like to, I think it's a very good question, but I know what we have ahead of us tonight, and can we
Sure.
continue this in
Yeah.
November? And do justice to this? So I'll make this an agenda item for November discussion, okay?
Just one question though, but the mooring tackle charge, that's not income for the Harbor Commission. The cost of that is recovered from the mooring permit holder, and then that
Right.
money is sent back to the yacht club. So that's not money that we can use for any purpose other than reimbursing the yacht club for the expenses that it entails.
So it should be a separate account, maybe?
And then the mooring, when that mooring tackle charge, and we use the term charge to distinguish between the fee that, goes into the harbor management account. But when that charge is paid, does the mooring permit holder pay that charge online?
So yeah, when you renew in January, let's just say you have a 20-foot boat, you send a combined $260 in with your renewal, with your registration, certificate of insurance, and paperwork completed. So you send your $260 in combined, it gets put into the account, and then the yacht club will bill, some years higher than others, depending on what happens during the year they have to fix. That needs replacement during the year, what we replaced on town things. Like this year, it's gonna be a north anchorage year, they're gonna pull the north anchorage, so that's not our cost. We'll inspect them, I'll inspect them all and talk about what they're fixing, but that's on their dime versus, the other 2 years when it's either the helix or the town moorings, west wall, all our other moorings from the helix field up.
We don't make money on that. The idea is that's what is used to cover the yacht club's expense.
Right.
Their responsibility for assisting the Harbor Commission with boating services for the public.
It's just that it hasn't gone up in so long. I said you should at least look at that to see, since everything is going up, is it something you should increase slightly so that you're not dipping into we have a lot of money in the 102 account
Right.
for paying for that unless you want to. That's just the exercise that the committee, Jeff's committee, we'll talk about.
All right, important
I did-
discussion.
I did an expenditure summary of the past few years, and it, you know, one year it was like 26,000, another year, again, 26,000. Last year we spent, $36,791 from that account, various fees for the maintenance, anything to do with the maintenance of the harbor.
And that would make sense, because that's the year where we pulled the town moorings this year, or this past winter. And, a number of them got welded, new shafts welded on, new shackles, new chains as necessary, a few new mushrooms as well. So that would make sense if you're gonna have a bigger year.
And we pay online moorings from that account as well.
Well, I think that we need a good discussion on, arguments for, arguments against a new boat, and costs related to that, and sourcing of all that, and, you know, a full, robust discussion that I think deserves more time than is available today.
Hey, can we get numbers going back 5 or 6 years, so we can do like a P&L kind of analysis for, you know, money in, money out? I mean, I think that would be the most helpful thing to analyze whether we need to increase it. And also, if we could get a,
Not this month,
not this month.
in that budget month, no.
Okay. And then the other thing that would be, a historical, balance of the 102 account, to see whether, is that something that's growing in size over time, or is it diminishing? That would be also really helpful to know.
I got it, after budget.
Okay, after budget, got it.
Yeah, another reason we should do this in November. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we move on?
Sure.
All right. Let's move into an important discussion, but let's move into old business and start with the update from George on our meeting with the Historic District Commission on the 2-sign public safety and risk management program. You may remember this. This started about a year and a half ago.
So, the Historic District Commission put us on their agenda for October 10th last week. Don and I joined by WebEx, and Don did a very nice summation and explanation of how we had adjusted the signs, including the size and the typeface, to what they had recommended. And as we spoke about last meeting, we put up the mocks that I had brought in and showed them about where they would go, and they heard us all and closed the application and voted on it, and it was passed unanimously of the commissioners that were there.
Well done. Well done, you two.
That was gratifying. So this matter is closed.
Well,
You have to get the signs now,
we
right?
now have to actually make the sign.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, the enablement of the signs.
Yes, we're good to
And the
go.
blessing of the signs by town agencies is now complete. Now it's a matter of creating the signs, per the design, and
Right.
constructing them with the help of the Public Works Department, who's agreed to install them.
It's all done. Yes.
Get that orange flashing neon sign that we've been
Yep.
talking about for a long time. Okay. So that was good. I think we've dealt with item 2. I will sign the documents, the 2 documents that Devin Santa sent Jeff, and give them to him, and then we will await your transmittal letter.
We can talk, I think there's just one document to sign, which is the pre-submission consultation form.
They gave me 2, but
I'll take a look at it. It's the same process as we followed with the yacht club and with the Cessna Brook Bridge.
All right, so I'll sign them and give them to Devin, but we'll hold off transmitting them until we get a letter from you, which I'll also sign.
Right, yes.
Okay. Now we're up to item number 3. There are no questions on the others. Sand management, and there's been a lot going on there with friends at the Army Corps of Engineers and others. And I want to thank Kim today, because I got a call earlier today from Jared Wardell of the Fairfield Citizen, who asked for an update on dredging, and who may even be listening in. Sometimes he does. And I gave him a quick overview, but I said, you really need to talk to Kim. She is far more detailed in her knowledge on this, and we have some sensitivity. So Kim spoke with Jared today, and I think that was a good conversation by all accounts.
Yeah, Don, thank you. I did speak to Jared, and the thing that I think I told him, and I think we should all focus on, is the extraordinary cooperation that we, all of us, have had from the Yacht Club, Country Club, the Army Corps of Engineers, DEEP. Everybody has been working extraordinarily hard to get this project, to keep this project moving forward. Where we stand today is good news. We have 3 legal documents signed which give permission to the Army Corps of Engineers to traverse the beach with their equipment and to put a pile of sand on the beach and waiting for the Murden to show up. The Country Club, the town and the legal folks have done what needed to be done, so that's good news. As you recall, the dredging was originally supposed to start the end of September. Mm-hmm. We didn't have the legal documents signed till the end of, I believe, last week. So we missed the window. And if you Google the Manasquan Inlet dredging, you can see the Murden at work. And the $64 million question is, where will she go from there? And if we want the Murden and the Corps to argue among themselves that the Corps needs to move the Murden north to do our project, we have to give them some context about why we believe that our project is more urgent than any of the other projects that they have scheduled. And Coral, the project manager, has once again been very generous and said we don't need to let them know till after this meeting tonight about our sense of why our project is urgent. But it's very clear that there are many other harbors that are filling in at a rate that's equal to our own, and the hard truth is that there's only one dredge that operates on the East Coast, and dredging season only goes for another couple of months, and they are due to head south by the end of November, I understand. So that's where we are in terms of the dredging. In terms of the PR, Jeff and I also met. I did speak with Jared today and tried to emphasize again how collegial this effort has been to get everybody who is impacted and has a legal status on the same page and working together. And I hope that comes out in his article when and if he writes it. We also, Jeff and I also met before the meeting with the town communication director, Lisa Sinclair, and explained basically what the project is going to look like. You know, the land crew coming in to create the angle, the Murden coming in to take the sand and dump it offshore, the Connecticut Bureau of Aquaculture setting up a pilot program on using that offshore dumping, you know, how DEEP fast-forwarded our application, and so once again, here we are. Everybody's worked hard, very hard, but unless the Corps is convinced that our project is more urgent than the other projects that they have scheduled, it looks like it will be next year before they come.
Is it safe to say that the practical use of the harbor with another winter's shoaling and sand could shut the harbor down? I suppose
yes, the answer is yes. Brian and I went out and did some measurements on Saturday, as he was mentioning, and we didn't have any fancy equipment. We had a line and basically a yardstick, a boat hook that is measured off at 6 to 5 foot increments. Mm-hmm. But basically, what we discovered right sort of at the mouth of where the wharf is, right here in the narrowest part, it was at a low tide, not an extreme low tide, as you know, but it was relatively low tide. It was about 52 feet in width across. And what was interesting was, the closer you got to the wharf, where am I? The closer you got to the wharf, the shallower it is.
Yeah.
But if you hug the coast here, that angle is almost straight down. So it's not really 52 feet that you can use, or that a boat with any kind of draft can use, but it's roughly 52 feet wide. Now, if we have a Hurricane Sandy that comes through, who knows how much sand would get washed in, and who knows if the Corps would then respond to some sort of emergency if we couldn't access the harbor. But
Kim, Kim and Jeff, you're going to be creating a letter, I imagine, that very persuasively argues for the urgency of this effort and so forth. Do you need information, anecdotes, facts from commissioners to support this, or are you, I mean, for example, I was watching one of our community sailing Ideal 18s come in at low tide. The channel at low tide is treacherous for a boat with a motor. Ideal 18s don't have any motors. They have to tack, and that area is, if there's another boat coming out and you have to tack in a very shallow area, it's very treacherous. And we have 50 sailors that are facing that situation.
well, we have high school sailors. We have 4 high schools that use boats without motors that have to tack in and out. We have two Ideal 18 programs. As Brian pointed out to me, we don't have a commercial fishing fleet that has to get in and out of our harbor. And if you look at the Manasquan Inlet,
They do.
So, I mean, we can certainly argue access, and we can certainly argue safety. And
Can we also argue that the Federal Navigation Project stipulates that the mouth of the river be open to navigation? Or be navigable?
we certainly can argue that, but it still is.
Well,
You know,
One storm away from.
A lot of it, yeah, the one storm, to answer that question, you know, we didn't have that area where the danger sign is. Last year it was not there, as you all know, because I measured that channel, you know, once a month, and it was fine. That thing just suddenly appeared on us partway into the season. You know, when I was out there doing it in, I think, June, I found it. Like, where did this come from? And I don't know, and that could happen, yeah. And that's a problem, because literally, you know, as you know, the sailboat is one boat wide. You have to get dead centered to go through. And the problem is, you know, I've seen it where you've got an Ideal maybe coming through. If you have a big boat coming, now he's got to stop or she's got to stop. If you have one coming out, they're trying to stop. Like when Kim and I were out there Saturday, because the current, the little whaler was getting swung sideways and, you know, drawn out sideways. You know, we couldn't hold our position at all. So you've got that, the currents to deal with too, with the tides. So if you have someone trying to sail and boats trying to come through, and I've had a direct traffic there more than once, trying to get boats scooting out and say, you got to stop back here, or hold up, stop here, because you can't make it in. There's too much traffic right now.
Let me ask two other questions that might be considered kind of political in nature. The idea came up once when we were talking with the first selectman about whether or not we should involve one of our, or more, or some of our congressional representatives in this kind of discussion. We considered doing that at one point with the Army Corps, and then rejected that idea. Is that worth revisiting, the involvement of someone from the, and then the other idea that I would just ask you to think about and respond to, apart from political involvement, is, all right, let's say the worst case scenario. They say, okay, sorry, Fairfield, you're not urgent enough. We can't do you until 25 or later. Is there any kind of a quid pro quo that we can ask for, that we maybe see the dredging ship come in the first quarter of the year, or something like that? Is there any kind of request that we can make for when the boat would come to dredge?
For what it's worth, I'll comment. I think this is a very interesting question for us to discuss, but the decision isn't ours. It's with the Corps of Engineers. And I think one possible decision is that we don't know whether it's going to be shut off or not. But in my opinion, for what it's worth, The most important thing is to do a full and complete job, to restore the 100-foot width of the channel, which hasn't been that width since 1960. So if we were to somehow convince the Corps, and back to your question about the politics, just again, my point, my perspective of it, I would strongly recommend against doing that. I think in a way that would be disrespectful to the Corps of Engineers who've been working so hard on this, on our behalf, and it gives the appearance that we're special and we're gonna get input, but that's just my opinion. The Corps of Engineers now, and I've been receiving texts from the project manager during the meeting, she needs to discuss this with her counterpart in the Philadelphia district, where the MURDN is working. And so she said whatever information we can provide to her about the need for this, they know it's a dire need. So when you're talking about community sailing and one-way traffic and anything else, we can send that to them. And they'll then consider whether the public interest of doing this outweighs keeping the boat in the Manasquan Inlet or the New Jersey Coastal Waterway.
But they're looking for this compelling reason from us after this meeting.
They're looking for a description of the conditions that they could then use, if they choose to argue for doing the project, trying to do it this year, with the understanding that the crew doesn't work during the November Thanksgiving holiday, and then in January, the boat is scheduled to go into some sort of a dry dock for repairs. So there's no assurances of any of this,
But other competing projects, we don't have the commercial side of it. We do have the safety and the recreational side that we can argue. And that one more storm passes through, it could shut us completely down.
I think those are just facts to present.
But we're competing against other projects that may have that third component, the commercial. We don't know what other projects they're considering doing.
Well, I believe that they're scheduled now to continue working in the New Jersey Intercoastal Waterway, if that's what it's called, in the Philadelphia district. And so our project manager would have to make an argument with her counterpart there, somehow that this is more important than what they're doing there, and divert the boat here.
Were we not to schedule, if we were on their schedule, albeit a few weeks ago to do ours, the boat obviously didn't come here, so it stayed there doing work that it presumably would have done after us. So aren't we just switching the windows? Is that an argument that we're already on your schedule for 2 weeks? We talked about the number of weeks we had them. Our weeks are going to be a little later than that's all, right?
I hear what you're arguing, and I just think that in my opinion, that's up to the Corps to decide. I mean, they planned the dredge. It's really our problem that it didn't happen on time this year because we couldn't work out the property rights access, which we were told the deadline was August 23rd. So I just think this is it's a very interesting, but the key thing, again, is to do a full job and restore the 100-foot width of the channel. And if we can't have assurances that this project, or if it was diverted this year, then I think that would be an argument against doing it this year, because then we don't know when it might ever be done again.
Because they came up and did a short job and they didn't complete to 100 feet. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. The 100-foot, yes.
Without knowing the time differential, I guess we're at the bitter end here, and they're looking for some information that would help make the case. And the information at this point is catastrophic. It's an accident. It's one more storm closing a navigable waterway. It's a boat running aground and heeling over and blocking the channel. So we're at the point where the only useful information we could give them is the next thing that's going to happen. And maybe that's part of the argument, which is at this point we have reached the bitter end. The next issue is catastrophic.
And Jeff, I take your point about the appearance of having a senator or a congressman get involved. I understand what you're saying on that. And however, what I don't know, maybe or others don't, do other communities feel the same way? I mean, if Westport was in our situation, would they be just as reluctant to call in Blumenthal or Himes, or not? I don't know. Is it a question that you could quietly talk about with Coral and to see whether this is so outlandish or not. I mean, they are elected representatives who do get involved in advocating for their communities on a whole variety of things, far more complex and expensive than.
And then you still have the congressman intervenes and they do the work this fall and it's not a complete job. And then, where are we then?
Well, we want a complete job.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line. I think we need a complete job.
I mean, why can't,
But have they given an indication that it wouldn't be a complete job? I mean, you're on the schedule, you're on the schedule. Have they approached us and said, we'll put you on the schedule, but it would be an incomplete job? Or is that fear?
They made it clear they have a schedule, but they've got a long list and not a lot of time.
But if they do say yes, the presumption is that they would complete the whole project, not partially done.
That would be that would have to be our understanding, I think, in any comments that we would make, arguing that they should do it this work on it this fall. Again, and the text that I've got during the meeting is that she's been talking, there's a crew that has to come from Mississippi to operate the excavator. And then the crew for the Murden doesn't have to come that long. So they haven't started that process yet of mobilizing the crew from Mississippi and getting the excavating equipment but she said she's just waiting to hear what information that we would provide to her after this. I also did, last month, I did attend a meeting with Congressman Himes. This was a meeting in Greenwich about the dredging in Greenwich Harbor, which is years away. And the congressman asked for a briefing from the Corps of Engineers, including the colonel of the Corps of Engineers, who came to Greenwich, about the projects in his district that are pending. And there are only three. There's Greenwich, which is a ways, years ahead, and Coral had the boards and showed the Southport project. And then the other big project is work on the hurricane barrier in Stamford. So Himes is aware of this project. It didn't receive as much attention as the other ones, but
well,
I just, again.
Is there a way without raising eyebrows or aggravating this situation? I mean, could we do could you do a soft sounding and conversation with her?
Oh, yeah,
could you mention that the chairman has asked if the involvement of our elected representatives would be helpful or not?
I can ask that right after the meeting. I can call her. I also, and I'm sorry to be talking so much, but Mr. Bradley is here. And I think we all owe him a gratitude for helping us interact with the country club and obtaining the agreements with the country club. Without his involvement, I don't know that we would be able to have that relationship.
No.
So I think Jim should be able to make a comment if he chooses to about this.
No, I think this discussion's going just the way it would go. I think the only thing that's missing is somebody sitting here from the Corps of Engineers, from the operational side, because their setting of a schedule, especially in the trench work, is probably the most difficult type of project to schedule. Because you've got weather, you've got regulatory, you've got almost anything. So they're in a tough spot too. But I think that if the scope of the project is impacted by the schedule, which is what you're talking about, not finishing it because they ran out of money or they ran out of time or they had weather conditions or whatever, you really should insist on a full commitment from them to do the complete project, because it will be a problem if it's not done and done right. And the idea that they will come back next year, it doesn't happen, frankly. So I think this discussion is good, it's healthy. Carl's looking for ammunition for her comments, her discussion with the Philadelphia district. Somehow they're going to have to give something up, their Manasquan project, or part of it, to send the dredge up here. You're already late in the season. You could even make a case that you don't want to do it right now. You want it. I mean, if we had money and no other concern. So this has been going on for a long time, and it's an important project. This commission has done an outstanding job of picking up the pieces, because continuity has been a problem. As people change on the commission and issues change, bureaucracy changes. They're used to having contacts, arranged more than one meeting, not with this project. They're used to having congressional pressure, and the way to do it is to ask them first. follow the bureaucratic rules of the road, you should basically just call up Jeff or Kim, call up and say, would this be viewed as a negative or overreaching in any way? Our chairman's concerned about it, or our commissioner's concerned about it based on our discussion.
Right.
And I unload both barrels on them, as politely and diplomatically.
Yeah.
But you've got a navigational hazard here. You do need, they are sensitive. The bureaucratic structure, a strong letter from the harbor master is something which they have to recognize. If it comes from somebody, a citizen who's been fishing and gets stuck on the end of the jetty, that's one thing. But if it's written the way I know he can write, and just says, these are our observations, so, splash them a little bit.
Yeah, think about it the other way, God forbid there was a god-awful catastrophe here, and human life was lost as well as property. And we did not do everything we could, including involving our elected representatives in Washington. How would we feel? How would they feel? All we're talking about is advocating for safety. We're not these are not mafia hitmen. These are elected representatives whose job is to represent our interests.
Frankly, you're very much probably the most important issue. Who's going to be responsible if there is a problem? After you have a discussion in a forum like this, saying there could be a problem. You might ask your harbor master as an attorney how he feels about that argument. An awful lot of decisions are made on that basis. You don't want the responsibility.
We need to show we took every step possible to make this harbor safe.
We already have a letter from the harbor master, who's a state appointed employee. We already have that letter in place.
Yeah, we submitted one. I submitted one already. I can submit another one. Yeah.
So that is a question, Brian, the question of liability has been raised. The question of liability has been raised. God forbid there is a catastrophe in the harbor because of shoaling and human life is lost. What is our responsibility as harbor management commissioners?
That's interesting because we're technically not on town property. We're in a state property, I believe. It's not under the defective road statute. I'm thinking out loud. It would probably have to, it may be an interesting claim. It would be an interesting claim to try to bring for failure to do something that you knew. You have an identifiable victim, potentially, of something coming imminently, whether you have a responsibility. That could be, there could be a claim there that you didn't do everything you should have done. It's on the water. That makes it a little bit different. You've got maritime components to it. It's not like just a trip and fall on a sidewalk or a defective highway road.
Isn't it the Army Corps' responsibility to maintain the Federal Navigation Project? Isn't that ultimately who the responsible party would be?
They're responsible for maintaining the Federal Navigation Project, yes.
Yeah.
But maybe it would be the harbor management or harbor manager or harbor management commission that says this is devolved to a situation where it's unpassable and it's now a risk, and you have to shut down the harbor.
Yeah.
And that's, if we know that there's imminent risk to people, then we have to take that action, I guess.
Right, pointing it out to the Army Corps of Engineers would be action that we're taking.
I think the very fact that we're discussing this should be part of the letter to them. That, we are concerned about liability and responsibility, and this is a step we may be forced to take.
Are going to draft the letter. That would be the priority at this point, is to get that letter out to Coral to express how important.
Could you say that this is so important that we wouldn't want to have to shut the harbor down in order to preserve safety?
Right.
Yeah, you've gotten to the point where you are limiting access, and I may have to limit access if the boats can't get in there because of the shallow depths. And we know now some boats we can clearly say that some boats have to take their center boards up before they can go in. Who were we talking, what was it, Kim, last weekend? We were chatting with, Jeff Wilson's boat, Jeff's boat. And he draws 9 feet with his board down. Well, he clearly can't come in anymore at low tide with the board down on his sailboat.
Because when he draws like 8 feet, 9 feet.
9 feet with the board.
Yeah, 9 feet with his board down. So there's a vessel that now we have to tell him, sorry, Jeff, you can't come in at low tide with your board down.
Yeah.
That's easy to make.
I mean, we all understand the danger of swinging booms and all that related to that. None of that is impossible in this situation.
No, I mean,
Not everybody does, no.
So, yeah, we have a scary situation. It's not.
I think a lot of it is one-way traffic. I don't think I know of another harbor where you have one-way traffic, frankly. I mean, everywhere else you have two-way traffic. Boats could fit by. Our little harbor, we can't do that anymore at low tide. And I think that's important. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of anywhere else where you have to go single file, one way at a time.
Yeah.
I don't know how you manage that. You have somebody on
Out there
site.
doing it, yeah.
That's what you'd have to do.
Yeah.
Well, that's how boats are going to run aground, because someone's going to come in, and there's going to be an ideal or another boat coming out, and they're going to try to yield or pull to the side, and next thing you know, they're stuck on the bottom because they went too close to lower wharf, or they cut the corner. Yeah.
3 weeks ago, I was coming in an Ideal 18, tacked the yield way to a sailboat that was coming out and ran aground.
I've seen that too.
And they had to get pulled off.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, one question.
Yes.
When we were involved in sand management and talking about the possibility of moving sand from the shoal down towards Sasko Beach, I believe, Jeff, help me out here, we got advice from Woods Hole, from scientists at Woods Hole, about how the sand was moving up and down the beach, and where the supply of the sand was coming from, the sandbars out on the flats in front of a country called Fairfield Beach and Sasko Beach. I was interested in the comment from one of the people walking with us through Woods Hole. He said, your bigger problem is environmental, because if you do get shut down, or the water is reduced substantially from coming in and out of the harbor, you'll have environmental issues because of the change in balance or depth or temperature or what, I don't know. But it's a thought that a comment that stuck in my mind, that I don't know how you get, is that too deep to get into, all kinds of complications
But the ecology of the harbor could be
endangered.
Yeah,
I don't know but it was an interesting comment and an interesting 10-minute discussion, if I remember correctly, Jeff. Was there any written documents on that meeting?
I have to get that, I have to go back and look at what they said to us at that time. There was also a comment that, at some point, due to the flow in the river, that an opening would be stabilized. In other words, that the natural movement of sand wouldn't close the harbor because you're constricting the opening, and then the force of the water coming through is such that it would maintain. But that's different than maintaining navigation access.
Right. Nature might maintain it at 5 feet or 4 feet.
Yes.
It's not good for us.
Yeah.
With a really fast current, right?
Yes. And that was another thing that we pointed out when we were out there, that there were young people sitting on the edge of that sandbar fishing.
Yeah.
And there's been
Go straight down.
Yeah, there's been problems at other places in the past that resulted in that sort of activity.
Well, Kim and I noticed that. It's funny you say that. We noticed that Saturday when we were out there pulling up close to the country club side, how steep it is. And if you try to walk down that slope, you're just going to slip right into very deep water. And there's people there all the time fishing and walking.
Right, very deep, very deep, very deep, 7 feet, 8 feet, it's at low tide.
Yeah.
In current.
Yeah, and current.
And we had drownings, as we know, in Perry's Pond in the last 20 years, as well as, I think, 2 years ago up at Lake Mohegan with the same thing. People going in those very steep areas, getting stuck.
Okay. I think we've tried to isolate ammunition that Jeff can incorporate in a letter to make our case persuasively. If we are successful, that's one thing. If we are not successful, is there any kind of timing that we can ask for as a concession when they will come back to do the full job, not a partial job? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that the dredge was scheduled to go to Florida in the spring of next year, and how the hurricane may have affected things that would keep them there longer than they anticipated, I don't know. Well, I mean, there are questions that you can ask Coral, and there are things that you can put in your letter. The two are not the same. Yeah. And I would ask you to pursue that kind of subject, as well as the congressional involvement. You don't need to put it in the letter until or if she said it could be helpful. I mean, I can't understand why another community elsewhere on the East Coast would do that. Well, maybe they would. Yeah. That wasn't my point in saying anything. But are the points to raise in the letter where we're stating the conditions, is the only one-way traffic at a time, concern about conflict in the channel between larger boats and also the community sailing programs and the junior sailing programs, concern of vessels running aground, which has taken place, the concern with the steepness of the slope, which can be considered I don't know how important that is for the Corps' decision, but a public safety hazard. The judgments and the statements of the harbor master expressing concern about potential navigation hazard, and also the concern that a severe storm might completely block off the harbor. We don't know that, but and then Doug's point, figure out how to write this, is that there have been numerous examples of inconvenience and problems, but the next level of issues would be some sort of a significant catastrophe or physical harm to someone. That's what they want, and then they have to make the argument based on the public interest of doing this versus the public interest in New Jersey, or in New Jersey.
One additional thought that I have is town first responders in the event of an emergency that's serviced by water is done out of that location at times, and so maybe some comment from town first responder about it impeding their ability to perform their duties, or potentially impeding their ability to perform their duties.
I might, backed up by the very creative multi-agency safety program that actually uses that facility as a base. It's now well-established protocols, safety protocols and first responder protocols. They're impressed with stuff like that. So it might be good to add in.
And there's not much time to do this, because for all we know, I'll call her tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow morning she's going to start her discussion with she wanted to know what the key things are that we're interested in.
She wants you to make her argument, which is okay.
Mm-hmm. Provide information that she can use in an argument if she chooses to do so, or if,
I think we have to focus on it's not inconvenience. It's becoming a life safety issue because of the single. It's not like it's just harder and you got to be more careful. No, you have one-way traffic around times of low tide, which is a public health and safety, life safety issue. It's only a matter of time before two boats crash into each other, or
I just want to make sure I understand. We were talking about one-way traffic in the channel. The issue that I saw is actually a combination of two-way traffic when an ideal is coming in. Powerboat of some kind is coming out in the channel. It's that kind of risk of collision because they can't.
I think that's what they...
Is that the same thing?
But the Corps understands that the width of the channel does not meet the Corps' guidelines for two-way traffic in the federal channel.
Okay.
They've known that for a long time.
One additional thought that I have is that the rate of the current has certainly increased there as the channel is narrowed. Now it's formed a riff, actually. There's wave action that happens there. Yeah. And there's a fair amount of human-powered traffic through stand-up paddleboards, kayaks, et cetera, that go through there that also becomes a safety hazard if somebody goes over in that current and can't recover.
I think the final comment, while the Corps of Engineers has been really really helpful, surprisingly so, I might add, on this project. They are a huge organization that can do anything. All they do is snap their fingers. So if Murdoch or Moron or whatever the name of that dredge is stuck down in Manasquan Inlet, it wouldn't take more than 6 calls from this district to put together a whole list of equipment and do it a different way. So it's a flat deck barge with a crane on it versus the Murron or Moron.
The squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Absolutely.
You don't want to be put off with partial performance.
That's actually, if I could just ask this question to Jeff, that's a very interesting point. Why do we need the Murden? If they've got the money and they're going to have a land crew with an excavator coming up from Mississippi, why cannot a barge just anchor itself and a barge do the same thing? We're only hauling it a little bit offshore. Can they not subcontract out to a private barge and tug?
You do. That's how they would solve it.
But not now though, because they would have to go out to bid. That was one of the advantages of doing it with this equipment. Besides that it's designed to work in an environment like this with sandy material, they didn't have to put it out to bid.
But even if they have to bid, let's say they have to put it out to bid, there's no winter, deadline. I mean, that doesn't freeze over. There's no reason they can't be doing this in November, December, January, right? February, March. And we'll have it for next season.
We're changing the scope of the project, and we have a deep approval for a particular project. Whether that would, and we also have an environmental impact evaluation for a particular project.
Wouldn't it be the same project? We're taking the dirt by an excavator instead of putting it on the Murden. If the Murden's not scooping, we're shoveling it on. We're going to shovel it on a barge. It's going to dump it in the same spot offshore. So I would think that would have the identical environmental. It's the same process. It's just we're using a different vessel instead of the Murden. We're using a different. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Talking too much. It's not something we can achieve in a week or so or in a few days.
No, but that's the big risk in construction when you try to jam up a schedule.
Yes, that was the point at the beginning.
I mean,
is there a way to do it?
It will go wrong. It will go wrong.
That's right.
And when you're jammed up against a schedule like that and trying to do it by Christmas Day or whatever, it's just marine construction and dredging are probably they're at the top of the list as far as risk.
We have a number of other items to discuss, including budgeting for next year. I don't want to shortchange this subject at all. It's the most important thing on the agenda probably. But we do have other things to deal with. If we've covered this, can we move on? Is there anybody else that has an urgent point to add to Jeff's notes that could inform the conversations he'll have with the Corps? Thank you all. Okay. Do we need a resolution related to authorizing this at all, or is it
just a sense of the meeting to transmit to the Corps the concerns the Commission has about the conditions in the harbor that point to the need for the most quickest, most expedient way to do this and again with the understanding that when the work is done, it will be a complete job, something like that.
You might think about elevating it from concern to fears.
No, do that. I'll draft a letter and show you what it looks like.
This is not a time to be polite.
We're subtle.
Yeah, we're subtle. Okay, let's move on. I think I tried to deal mostly with the Porsche application. I think item 4, Jeff, unless you have anything to add to that, we can move on to item 5.
Sure.
Plan of Conservation and Development.
Yeah, I'll provide an update report for the POCD committee. The POCD subcommittee has reviewed the current draft POCD in its entirety, and we also met with Jeff Stedman to help provide input and also assist on clarification on certain matters. We're currently working on a draft letter for TPZ that includes a set of preliminary recommendations. there's a handful of recommendations that we plan on including. I'll share those verbally right now with the commission. One is improving the language around support of the harbor management plan, and also including a section that outlines the goals of the HMP. A second is revising the coastal boundary map that's currently used in the POCD to include the harbor management area, what we're calling Map 1, and that's what Jeff is holding up here. Also the creation of an additional map that specifically of the harbor management area that shows the key spaces within the harbor management area. So things like the Lower Wharf and Perry Green and the mooring field, et cetera. The comments would be adding some area-specific recommendations on HMC initiatives that could be included in the list of POCD action items. So examples include things like sand management, ongoing sand management, maintenance of dredging of the Federal Navigation Project, maintaining landing facilities of the town boatyard, et cetera, but there will be a list created around that. And then also noting that the POCD is required to be consistent with the Coastal Area Management Act, and providing that the POCD could be strengthened by providing specifics on how it would be consistent, including sharing some information that we received from Jeff in a Coastal Vision document. The last point would be noting that the agency would be expecting to receive a referral from TPZ of the vision, of the final draft of the POCD for comment. So that's where we are. We started this letter. It should be short and to the point with some suggested language. If timing permits, we'll bring this letter to the next HMC meeting. If we feel timing does not permit, then I would ask the commission to authorize this committee to work with the HMC chair on finalizing the letter and submitting it to TPZ. Any questions or comments on that?
If there's support for that, I would welcome a resolution that specifies that.
Might just add to what Doug was saying. I thought we had a very good discussion that there's two aspects, Doug and Chris talking about this, of our review. One is a review specifically with respect to the harbor management plan, because the town code, again, specifically says that the commission will review proposed amendments to town plans, rules, and regulations. So the POC document has to be referred to the Harbor Management Commission for a formal review. So there are places where we can, and we've talked about it, we have a couple of drafts, specifically propose additions to the POCD with respect to the harbor management plan. That's part of it. The other part of it is in terms of just providing information that the Planning and Zoning Commission may wish to consider, and that's based on that larger vision statement that we passed out last month. So the short letter is essentially a letter of transmittal with reference to these two parts: the recommendations specific to the harbor management plan, and then as a guidance document or in an effort to assist or help make the POCD stronger, we have a larger coastal vision document. I did get talk with someone from DEEP today. DEEP provided very general comments on the POCD. And actually the person who I talked with, Ms. O'Neill, specifically said that they're okay with the POCD. But they said that their review is in general terms rather than details of and they like the reference to resiliency and to throughout the POCD. So we're not expecting any more from DEEP on that. And when I talked with one of the TPZ commissioners, that the hearing is tonight, but this is the first night that they will have a discussion on the August 19th draft. So they anticipate that the hearing will have to be extended, which would give us a chance to submit this, not for the purpose of arguing that the document is not well done, but for the purpose of contributing to making it stronger. And I think that's I'll stop talking now. But we've done a lot of work on this.
Yeah.
And for the benefit of the commission, of those sort of two pillars that Jeff put forward, One of them first is very specific to the harbor management plan and the jurisdiction of the HMC. The second is specific to the Coastal Management Act and the need to be consistent with it. And so we've uncovered some information in our review that we think would be helpful for TPC to consider. So that's why we've broken it into two parts. One is specific to our jurisdiction, another is information that we're sharing.
I think, pardon me, Don, I'll just stop. But also, we talked about providing, again, in the spirit of cooperation and being of assistance, we have these several submittals that demonstrate, I think, the significance of Fairfield's coastal area and the coastal area environment and why it deserves special attention in the POCD. And we also point out clearly that the harbor management jurisdiction doesn't include the entire jurisdiction of the town for coastal management, a significant part. So if anybody's interested in just looking at these, sorry it's so large in the copy, but.
And I just wanted to point out another dynamic in, let's call it the internal communication process as we try to manage and introduce our story into the POCD. I've had conversations face-to-face and by email with the TPC staff, and the direction is always the same. I told them we're working on this. They want it as soon as possible. That there is time-related, no deadline, but they want it as soon as possible. And then, when I talked to one of the commissioners, I learned that the deadline is actually November of 2026. So all I'm saying is that there is a difference between expectations of how we participate between professional staff and some people on the commission itself.
Because there is, the towns are required to update their plans of conservation and development every 10 years to continue to be eligible for state grants or what they call discretionary spending. Doesn't mean they can't update it. It doesn't mean they have to wait for 10 years, that they could adopt it now. But as far as the state requirement goes, they're not required to update it until 2026. The other part of it is they could make amendments at any time they wish to. So this matter of the Coastal Management Act and the, but I think our recommendation specific to Southport Harbor, for example, on page 58 of the document, there's just a couple of sentences having to do with the Harbor Management Commission. And it doesn't provide a support or a statement of support for the harbor management plan. So that's a simple, I think, proposal, and we prepared a draft of that. So with respect to the harbor management plan, I think that we have a good.
I had the foresight to include it in there, but I think they need the collaboration of the HMC to strengthen that aspect of it, is the bottom line. And I think to the point that you were just making, Mr. Chairman, that even though there may be time, it's actually taking us more time to even get to this point as we wanted to, and so I think as soon as possible will be how we'll continue to keep driving on this committee, because it's taking a little while, and we should, I know there's a lot of activities that are going on, so it will probably take more time than we thought, but we'll still keep our foot on the gas with it.
Plus, the results of the hearing tonight may inform us and what we want to include in this document.
Exactly right.
But it's in process.
Thank you. Thank all of you for your diligence and strategic approach to giving this plan the input it needs to reflect our mission and all that we're concerned with. I'll move on to item 6, the Perry Mill Green bulkhead replacement. Jeff, is there anything to update us on that? It looks like it's in motion and moving along.
I know the harbor master talked with engineering about the placement of cleats, to tie boats to, and he was satisfied with that. The one matter that he did bring up is that he said he seemed to be saying that there's a mound of rock or sediment waterwood of the bulkhead. He was going to pursue that. I don't think that should be. But Brian's been talking with engineering about it. I
All
don't
right.
have anything more to add.
Thank you. I think we've dealt with item 7 when Brian was talking during his report. Jeff, unless you have anything to,
No, I just need some numbers. I'll put together a little spreadsheet with, like a P&L for the past 5 years and balance, running balance. And we'll see if there's an issue, and should be simple.
and that'll be for discussion next month.
Sure, if I have enough time after the budget process to get the numbers from Betty and then, and make it for the next meeting. If I can, then we will.
Very good. Okay, item 8 is nominations for officers for 2025. You'll recall that, I think it was back in August that I announced a nomination subcommittee that involved Doug, and
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and in the interest of time, I know we have more to do, I'll keep this brief. One note that I'd like to make is, the chairman had appointed, myself and Chris Smith to this committee, but that Mr. Smith has stepped back from the committee. At this point, I've heard from or spoken with nearly all the commissioners in terms of their interest or lack of interest in participating in the slate for next year. I'm confident in our ability to make a recommendation to the HMC within the time, but also I haven't connected with everybody, and so I want to remind any commissioners that would like to be considered for the slate for 2025 to reach out and contact me. There's only a couple that I haven't connected with on this topic. And I think we'd be in a position to make a recommendation for discussion to the HMC at the November meeting.
very good. So you expect to make a recommendation in November, and it could be voted on then or in December as events determined.
I think how the discussion goes, I just think it's worth taking more time to make sure that all commissioners feel as though they've had ample time.
Right, very good. Well, I hope you all are thinking about that, and Betty, is there anything else that needs to be done procedurally to bless this election nomination process?
You just need to follow the rules like you do every year.
I think we're doing that, are we not, though?
If there's a committee that has any minutes or agendas, then they should present them, that's all.
How do you, I don't know, I think it's a one-person
Formal
committee.
meetings, correct?
There haven't been any formal
Yeah.
meetings at this point.
So there's nothing to present, so I think we're okay.
I believe so.
Good. Okay, that said, we get to budget planning for 25-26. And just to be clear, the fiscal year goes from July 1 to June 30. So that means we're 4 months into the fiscal year 24-25, right? And we're starting to plan for the fiscal year that involves 25 and 26.
Right, July 1, 2025 through June 30th, 2026.
Right. And Betty, thank you for sharing all the documents about where we are. I think that reflects 4 months to date into the year ending.
This was as of October 10th. You're talking about the 25 year-to-date document that I have submitted to everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. So it shows you what you had expended to date, what is encumbered for open purchase orders. So I also did your fiscal year 24 to show you where you ended up on June 30th.
Right.
You had a balance of $350.37. I also provided you with a draft and also a draft of your Season Pro account, because that's new for this year where you break out the amounts. And what I had done was I had taken, just to balance out the entire account, I did drop your fuel reimbursement because you weren't using that much for fuel. And I just added it to consultant services.
Good question. So year-to-date, which has only been since June 1st, right?
July 1st.
July 1st, we're at 90% of our fees and professional services.
You're really not. It's
Okay.
because it's,
So we're not in trouble.
you're not in trouble.
Okay.
but it's a big number. I mean, we're spending more, I suspect.
Because the purchase orders are what you would anticipate over the 12 months.
Right.
So I did an estimate of what your Verizon invoices are gonna be, what your Fees and Pro would be.
That's the 11,575.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can afford Jeff for the rest of the year, though?
No.
No.
I'm kidding. Okay, I'm kidding, okay.
Yep. Good.
All right, so I guess what you need from us is...
Sorry, Don, I have one more
Oh,
question.
excuse me.
Sorry. We added the $1,000 under the special, 56-140, special department supplies last year.
I left it.
Oh, you did, okay. And
I
if
left-
we didn't use this year's, it just goes back to the town and we have to ask for it again, correct?
That's correct. But you've already used some of it.
Okay.
And there'll be
And
more
What I
expenses.
had done,
So will we get an additional 1,000 for the coming year?
yeah,
Because, well, we have to think about this, because if we want our signs produced before July 1st, we have to pay for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Out of this year's.
right, well, you had the $1,000, but you've already
Used some
expended
of it,
some
yeah.
of it for the signs,
For the design of
mock-ups,
the signs
et
and the
cetera.
mock-ups, yeah.
And I did have language somewhere. I did have language somewhere for the 1,000, I just don't have it in front of me.
That's fine.
But it spoke to continued management of that area, which is why I felt that it was okay to leave the 1,000.
Yeah, I was gonna think maybe we needed to bump it up because we have used some, but being that we'll have used some and then we can use the 1,000 that we get for the next year, but we may want to use some of that this year. Is there a way to do that? Like if we had to pay for the signs out of this year's budget, but we were under on other things and then we take the money from next year? I don't know.
It's called a roll-up code. So certain accounts, you know, if you're $10 over on one and, you know what I mean, you have
Yeah.
$10 extra, it's okay. But there are specific accounts that are linked to each other, so to speak. But as you can see from last year's budget, you didn't really have much to play with. It's not like you were over a significant amount.
Yeah, we underspent because the signage program was slowed down, so
Right.
we had a lot of work to do.
And now we have 2 signs. Originally, we were only doing 1.
Yes, right. So are there any areas in the 26 budget that he has drafted that should be increased or reduced, in anyone's opinion?
I have a comment.
Yes.
This was maybe my third time seeing a budget, but I'm fascinated when I see this budget of how much this group can accomplish on a budget of this size. But I also realize now, having turned a few laps with the group, that a lot of that is, I think, because of the generosity of some of our consultants and other people who are supporting the HMC. I think if we look at the 24 actuals and what we're going to see in 2025, that what we have budgeted for our professional services and secretarial services is too light. And think that we should propose an increase in both of those areas. I'm happy to share with you my thoughts on what that would be, but at least for discussion, I think they're light and should be proposed as an increase so that we can keep up with what are the increases of cost of living and services and everything else that the people who are working with the HMC, I'm sure, are experiencing.
Exactly. I mean, if we have inflationary increases related to tackle and mooring, you know.
Why wouldn't we have it?
Right. I totally agree, but is that something that's set by the town, not us? The secretarial payment, so to speak, is it?
No, my fees are fine. It is set. There's a range. I'm fine. Thank you, though. Thank you.
And the professional fees for, like, say, Jeff, that's not something we decide on, is it?
That's correct. Just like when you would hire a consultant, any consultant, and, you know, other expenses like I pay Brian Leclerc out of that, the harbor master's expenses and reimbursement for, you know, damage. You know what I'm saying? There's, these are small amounts, but you don't have a small budget. If you were looking to increase your budget at all, you just need to be prepared to defend that.
Yeah.
And how you came up with that figure.
Which is what we did when we had $1,000 increase, which was the first time in many years that there was any increase in the budget. And it was relatively painless. I went to the RTM and explained it. I mean, we're talking $1,000, but it was not difficult. So let's go back to professional service fees. That line has stayed the same for several years. It has not changed.
There's also more in it. We've brought, I mean, obviously Jeff is the most significant part of it and such a valuable contribution, but we've got a lot of projects going on. There are other consultants. There's fuel and other things in there. I think that it's just growing as these initiatives come through, so.
There, you know, even with lower wharf construction, while everything is tied up in, I guess, engineering, people will cover all of that, but there may be other consultancy that are needed for that.
I would also say, though, that even though it feels like we have a lot of projects that are active right now, that once we push through these, we have to update the plan itself. I see other projects coming forward in 2026 that will take at least as much time, if not more, from, you know, professionals and outside consultants as we're seeing now. And so I think we could back up why we would want an increase. In part it's inflationary, in part it's man hours.
Yeah. Jeff, can you speak to this?
No.
Do you see your...
I'm not asking for an increase. It's up to the commission feels if they want to do that. But what Doug said, though, is very true. I think the big project that we have after dealing with the dredging project is updating the harbor management plan. We were awaiting completion of updating upon the approval of the dredging project with a 100-foot wide channel that we would then incorporate into the updated plan. So we have, for several years, we've been sitting on we've come up with proposed goals and strategies for the harbor management plan and policies. I think that's our next big effort. But I appreciate, I mean, I could say I could raise my hourly rate, which isn't very much, but I hadn't planned on talking about that tonight.
But I mean, it's not just the hourly rate, it's the number of hours. I mean,
the number of hours.
I mean, in the instance of the different projects that Doug is talking about and now harbor management plan and blah, 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 it begins to mount. And then at what point do we bump over 20,000 in the overall portion? I mean, it's remained steady for these number of years that are looked at.
And we tried to keep it steady, actually, on purpose, not to go over the amount that was allocated.
Do you have a suggested amount?
I do. The other thing I just want to say is I know an hour is an hour is an hour when we're dealing with outside consultants, but as an example, even last night at midnight, Jeff was working on POCD matters, things like that, and it's not time and a half or double time, or an hour is an hour, but just because he's working 24 hours a day doesn't mean that it's the right rate. So I did have thoughts coming into it. My thought was that we would seek to increase the professional fees aspect of the budget from 20,000 to something like 24 or 25, or try to do that based on additional hours and other fees. And also, I was not aware, Betty, that the town sets it, but was going to suggest that we reset the secretarial services to 1,500 only because we've seen it reach that threshold before. And it's showing here that 2024 actual is 1474.
Right.
Looking at this?
That is because I was working on a project where I was compiling a lot of information for him. Jeff, you remember that, and that was actually supposed to go on leftover money in the prior, and then it didn't. So that's why you saw that there, just so you know. And you'll see that I increased it from 1,200 to 1,300 to accommodate a special meeting. Like you had the special meetings with the Porsche, and then I took off because you were not using your 2,000, you weren't really using it in your communications line item, so I took the 100 from there. I just flipped it from where I thought you would need it.
Well, without realizing where some of it's coming from, we saw the need maybe for additional special meetings, which is why I was thinking 1,500 from 1,200, just to accommodate that, using the history that was there. And the anticipation of maybe a rate increase, but also additional hours is why I was thinking 24 or 25. But that's...
I think that's, under the circumstances, we're in a period of record inflation, we have rising work, increased work demand. I think increasing fees to that amount is appropriate, and I would entertain any kind of resolution related to that, because I think this does have to be a budget resolution. If we were to increase professional fees to, let's say, 25,000, the higher, I mean, we have to go and defend it to RTM. We have not had an increase in that line for many years, I think at least 5 years, from what I've been told. Kim is nodding affirmatively.
And just so you,
I think I could defend that with the RTM if it were on me to do that.
and just so you are aware on that, there were years that, when I had invoices that came in June, some of which were for Jeff's work, where there wasn't enough money in the budget. I mean, here, $210, you know what I'm saying? And because he does do so much work for, it's the management of the harbor, I was able to justify just the transfer of that amount. So there were times over the past few years where a portion of it did get taken from the 102 account.
Right.
Because you ran so short, you know.
So the cost has been higher than 20,000.
Yeah, in some circumstances, like I said.
Yeah, but I mean, this is kind of a recognition of the fact that it's not changed for several years.
Yeah.
The work quality has not been diminished in either area, and some kind of recognition ought to be made, as would in other entities, probably throughout the town of Fairfield. Really?
Can we make a motion? I'd like to make a motion that we increase secretarial to 1,500 and the fees and professional to 25,000.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Chris Smith seconded. Jeff made the motion. Thank you. All in favor of this motion? Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Just as a point of order, though, I mean, how that's distributed among, harbor master, consultants, et cetera, that's another question, right?
That's still up to the commission, I think.
Yeah, it all comes out of that line, but we get to say who
Right.
goes what out of that line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other lines in addition to that area require
George,
attention?
I'm not sure if I understood where that line, the special department service. You're saying that the $1,000 for this year, this fiscal year.
Right, we had gotten for this, starting in June, we had gotten $1,000 approved. We've already used, I think, $300 to $400, something in that line.
Yes.
Area for design of the signs that he put a lot of time in designing after we made changes to fonts and changes to sizes, and then to produce the mock-ups.
Yeah.
But we're projecting another 1,000 for next year.
I've left it in. That's actually the sentence I was looking for, expenses related to oversight, maintenance, and signage. So it really wasn't something that you needed to make go away. It wasn't a one-time thing because you're gonna continue
Right.
to manage that
And
area.
we may want to put up a plaque or something like
Well,
that.
then maybe when the pier's completed, additional signage is needed too at the lower level.
Correct, for sure.
Right, so I didn't wanna take that out.
No.
I wasn't thinking that it was,
No.
a
Our
one-time.
production costs haven't begun yet, but our design costs were higher because events required us to make redesigns. Neighborhood reaction and reaction from the Historic District Commission. Each of those propelled changes in the design, simple but changes that cost money.
But my question really was, is
Right.
$1,000 enough?
Is it?
I'm unsure whether we can, because we do have some balance left on that line for this year. but not enough, I don't think, to cover both signs. So could we invoice and pay for one sign from this year and do the second one next year?
Yes.
We could. Do we wanna wait until next year to do, and if not, is there a way we could pay for both of them somehow this year? Because we would have to wait till June.
Yeah, I think, the expectation, the conversation with the Historic District Commissioners, we would proceed with both signs as soon as possible. All the conversation we had was how late this project was, and the liability issues don't go away. I mean,
Correct.
we're doing this
No, I agree. It'd be
because
better
there's
to
a
get
liability issue.
Yeah, I just don't know how the money works as far as that. It's gonna be more than what we have as a balance in our
But I think,
140 line.
I think with support from Betty, I think we can, I mean, we're talking an additional, we're talking
500 maybe.
$400 or $500, we can find that somewhere.
Yes.
Okay,
It's
good.
been a balancing act
I got you.
every year.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we've changed that line in the budget. Are there any other budget line changes that need to be discussed for the next fiscal year?
I know that postage is going up significantly, but you have not, last year you only spent $41.62, because a lot of it is electronic, so unless the harbor master intends on doing a mass mailing, I think we're comfortable with $150.
Good. And there's no other inflation-related adjustment that we need to consider at this time?
Would there be, Jeff, in your opinion, as we start to tackle harbor management plan, any increases or noticeable changes in printing for that kind of production?
We did get an estimate of that for reprinting the plan. Now I forget what that was. But then again, that depends on how many documents we print, and what sort of interim printing expenses we might have with, as we go through the chapters again. Although now there's not.
Been enough?
Do we have money in that grant? There was a ship grant.
There may be a little bit left in that.
So that's where some of those costs would go to.
But we're gonna also have to contribute some cost for the Harbor Commission as well to that effort.
When you say the printing of that document, are you suggesting that it's just how many pages is being printed and distributed to the commission?
Yeah, because the rest of it, I think, we would wanna have some paper copies, but now much of it can be online when we
And be online, and I can also, do that here.
I don't think we know enough to add, now for any additional printing costs. We have to reform that committee as well.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Right.
planning committee?
Plan update committee. We've lost Mary, and Cheryl was a member of that committee.
Right now,
Another role for the former chair, yeah. Sorry.
you have $700 there. Last year, you had spent $220.
We didn't do much at all.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's where the overage where you can balance it out.
Yeah, I say leave it at 700. I think that'd be a hard one to justify boosting up in this day and age.
Yeah.
Seems right.
Especially if you didn't use it last year.
Yeah.
All right, so Betty, you'll revise the budget accordingly based on resolutions that we approved. And then do you need any other authorization from us to go forward with this to meet your deadlines?
No, it's just only the two line items, the secretarial services and fees and pro, correct? There were no other?
I don't recall any other.
Okay, I'll copy you on when I send it over to the finance director.
Right. I remember seeing a document, maybe it's later in the year, where it's a budget message and you discuss things.
They're not doing that this year.
Okay, doing.
Yeah, they're doing with a budget summary.
Okay, so that changed. Okay. think we've reached the end of the budget discussion. If there are no other matters, is there any comment from the public?
Do we vote to approve this budget, or that's not for us to approve?
I thought you just did that.
Okay,
That was your second to make those changes, and that would
And
be
that-
for the submittal.
got it.
Okay.
And then it goes to the town to.
Yeah, then there are RTM discussions.
No, by making those two changes, we approved those changes and the entire budget.
Yes.
Got it.
Is there anybody on the line? Is there any comment from the public? Okay. Yes, Jeff?
I have a comment, a couple of things. Talked with the First Selectman's office this afternoon, and they're organizing a meeting to discuss a lasting tribute to Pat Carroll and Mary Von Conta. So they'll let us know about when that meeting might take place. I did speak with texted with Pat's great-grandson, and told him that we haven't forgotten. We're still going to proceed and try to come up with an appropriate dedication to both. Pat
So
and Mary.
would it be two gestures or one gesture representing two people? Or to be determined?
To be determined, I think. I think it would be, my thought was it should be two separate, but it, and then I know, Betty and I were working, and I don't know if she's done it yet, but, to post the tributes that we did for Mary on the town website.
The tribute is, but I was having difficulty getting some of the photos. I thought some of the photos, especially the one at the outside ceremony, I thought should be there. But I haven't been able to do that yet.
Okay.
There was one other item regarding posting on the website that actually Kim mentioned in passing in emails regarding the mooring agreement with Pequot Yacht Club.
Memorandum of agreement between the town and Pequot.
Yeah, presently that's not on our website. And I think you were suggesting that it would be useful to be more transparent about how that all works, to put that document on our website as well. I mean, I don't think it's a must-do this week, but it's something that, if you could help us with, we'd be grateful.
Mr. Chairman, can I add to that, your comments, it ought to be reviewed and revised. It hasn't been signed since 2009. And it's supposed to be, the document assumes that it's reviewed on an annual basis.
Is that the same document we're talking about?
Yep. It renews itself.
It automatically renews
Automatically renews, but it hasn't, last time it was signed was early 2000.
2009 by John Watkins as
Yeah.
the Commodore and Ken Plato was the First Selectman.
Well, if it's a simple matter of a new signature, I could add that.
I don't know, you might want to review it, just read it through. It's a...
Should it be an agenda item for discussion?
I think the commissioner will look at it.
Well, I think it's signed by the First Selectman
First Selectman,
and
the
the
Commodore.
Commodore of the Yacht Club.
Typically, the yacht club has gone through, the commission's gone through, presented to the First Selectman, he signs off on it, and it goes another year. And it's got this easy clause in it where it will be objected, just goes on and on and on. And it's been since, I think, 2009. It probably should be reviewed.
Before it's posted on the internet?
I'm an old document, and it's a very dynamic and successful relationship between all these different parties. I would think we'd want to preserve it more than anything.
Where is this available now? So we can review it.
I can email it too.
I think I have a copy.
I have a copy too. I thought I had gotten it from the town website, but apparently not.
Yeah, I thought it was on there.
Maybe it was at some point.
I thought
Maybe
it was
if you
under
send it
topic
to Debbie,
document.
she could send it to all the
I
commissioners.
think so too. I don't know how else I got it.
Jeff, is the mooring agreement encompassed in the memorandum of understanding, or is it separate?
Well, we get into a long discussion here. We also have guidelines for allowable reimbursable cost
Yeah.
regarding scope of services and reimbursement for mooring, maintenance, repairs, and inspections.
Is that in the
And that's-
MOU, or is that separate?
That's separate than the MOA. I mean, you were involved in working on this, but
Well, is the town making some kind of a making noises about the fact that they want to go, purchasing to go through it?
No, we haven't talked about that, but that's an issue that's really significant, because pursuant to this memorandum of agreement and the approval of the harbor management plan, the yacht club is responsible for providing certain boating services to the public.
Right.
And that's the basis of this memorandum. And if there are discussions about, putting any of this work out to bid, the background of this memorandum and the agreements with the club need to be considered.
Right.
But I don't want to get into all that now. I can
So it's just one document, though?
There's just one document, the memorandum of agreement.
And that encompasses the mooring and the understanding
That
by reference?
by reference, yeah.
Yeah. So I would think you would,
Thank you for that.
tomorrow, but I mean, it's something that ought to be, I know it's being brought up at the yacht club because they're running across the same situation. So is it stale? Should it be reviewed?
The yacht club will assist on an annual basis with inspection, repair, and/or replacement of mooring tackle used in the harbor, and
Right.
go on and on. But I think it's worth to say that the example of the dredging project and what we've done over the past year, without the assistance of the yacht club, I don't know that we would be in the position that we are, because the yacht club accommodated the meetings, took the DEP people out in the launch to look at the area, and so it's really a partner in all that we're doing. And that's as a result of this memorandum of agreement and the harbor management
It's
plan.
a dynamic and successful relationship that's gone on for years. It ought to be protected, and the way to protect it is to go in advance, look at, review the documents, and then, rather than have some crisis come up.
Maybe.
Is there a separate agreement annually for reimbursement of the mooring, or is that just the bill submitted? There is no separate agreement?
There's no separate agreement. There's no separate annual agreement.
Jeff, you're the chair of the, until now, very quiet mooring committee. But it would be helpful if you and anybody that you wanted to add to a committee could look at this agreement and review it and do as Mr. Bradley's been mentioning. Is that something you could take on?
Yeah, look it up and we'll try to get it signed.
Yeah, happy to help you if you need any history.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate that. Okay, so Jeff mooring committee will look to update and review our memorandum of agreement with the Pequot Yacht Club. If there's no further business, I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Vote? All in favor? Aye. This meeting is adjourned.